contrast to other books on music theory, and this is from his book Harmony, the aim of this book is to build a real and practical bridge from composition to theory. And that's the goal of this show, is to build a practical bridge from theory to composition. So that's sorely missing in theory. I have a saying that if you're a music theorist and you can't compose, you're not a music theorist. When I look at any piece to analyze it, the first thing I do is I look at it globally. All right? Very foreground thing. And the first thing I notice is that right here, there's an F chord. Right here, there's an F chord. Right? Right here is an F chord. There's an F chord. There's a C chord. All right, that's a good start. I see basically what's going on, and notice they're kind of evenly spaced. So, you know, I have 1, 5, 1. That's basically what the chorale's doing with some dissonance in between. All right, that's what the background is in Schenkerian analysis, and that's called prolongation. All right, I probably should write that down, but prolongation. What the one chord is doing. Okay, so let me get moving here. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the bass line first, because in chorales, as some of you may know, the melody's given, the soprano's given. You write the bass, alto, and tenor. Okay, so I'm going to just kind of trace the bass line, and notice it starts on F and goes up to an F, and then goes down to a C. Actually, I need to grab my iPad and move it. Hang on one second. All right. And then right here where this C is, notice that's an arpeggio right there. All right. Then back to an F, then down to an F, up to a C, down to an F. Okay. Well, there's a lot of Fs, Cs, Fs, A's, C's, F's. So there's a lot of F. Sorry, that's terrible handwriting. FACs. There's a lot of F chords there. Right? Okay. All right, so he does that. These are just passing tones in a larger sense. And again, there's this arpeggio. It's a C arpeggio. Then back to F. There's a B flat here, if you want to think of that as a subdominant. All right, but yeah, back to the 1, 5, 1. All right, I'm gonna hang on and skip this phrase right here, and I'm just gonna go to the end for a second. So we have the 5 going down to 1, walking up to the 5, going down to the 1. Now, if you look at that, and you're harmonizing in chorale, if you look at that phrase, we'll talk about the counterpoint against the melody in a minute, I guess. But if you see that line, it's so simple. Bach was on C, he was on the dominant. He went down a fifth. He walked up to the fifth, scale step, and then back down to the tonic, the root, the scale. That's the easy bass line. And I'm just going to do this in this area right here. So between this C and the C right here, we have an octave. That's the interval. All right. Then between the next bass note and the soprano, we have a third or a tenth. It's a tenth, but I'm just going to call it a third. All right. And then that moves parallel to another third. All right, then it collapses into an octave, those two A's. All right, then it goes to a sixth, then a fifth, and then finally that fifth ends up in an octave. Sorry about my handwriting, guys. So on the outer voices between the bass and the soprano, you're pretty much only going to see octaves, fifths, sixes, and thirds, with the majority being sixes and thirds, these can't move in parallel. There is one situation where they can move in parallel, but we're not going to get into that. But sixes and thirds move in parallel or contrary or oblique motion all the time. Okay, so that's why that bass line works. And that's how I would compose that bass line. I wasn't even thinking about chords. I was just harmonizing the bass line to soprano using those numbers. Well, I didn't write that, but that's how I would have done it. Okay. Let's see. Let's move on. We'll do some chords here. I'll tell you what, we'll do that in the second section, and then I'll come back to the first part. This is really in three parts. So we're right here, and it's approaching this cadence. And we have some interesting things going on here. Notice we have a B natural and another B natural, which just tells you that you're in C, right? Okay. Also in this section, what he doesn't do earlier and doesn't really do near the end necessarily is we start getting some faster rhythms and a bunch of ties. And Bach loves to tie over the bar. You can see that. Okay, so this section where he goes to the dominant is where he adds the tension. The first section is very smooth, very simple, very simple. In fact, I call this the sacrificial line. The inner voices, if we look at the tenor, notice C, 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 D, G, C, C, B, C, 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 C. That's the sacrificial line. Because in four-part writing, you're basically using triads, right? So if we look at the voicing of this first chord, we have an F, an A, and there's our C, and then F on top. Let's look at a different example where I can break it up a little bit. Let's see. Where's a good example here? I want to get one with the C in it. Oh, okay. Well, there's a couple. So this one, here's an F, FA, and then the C. And again, the sacrificial line is here. That's my own terminology. I don't know anybody else that uses that terminology, but I used to compose a lot of chorales. I still do once a week or so. And you always get the situation where you get this sacrificial line. Okay, so one singer has to sort of be a pedal tone. That's just the way the harmony works out. Okay, let me erase some of this. Here we have the root of the scale, right? And jumps up an octave, right? It has an E natural, then an E flat, then a D, then a C. These would be dissonances. They would be removed rather quickly. This E is a half step away from D. So this is a chromatic line. So this is a upper neighbor tone of that, and this is a lower neighbor tone of that. Here we have a C arpeggio. This note here is a C, an E, and a C. That's a C, and the D is a dissonance. So you remove it. So once you start removing dissonance, and I'll do it with yellow, here we have an F. We have a B flat, we'll keep that one. we'll keep the A, but we're going to get rid of it in a minute. We have the G. We'll definitely get rid of that one. That is a lower neighbor or a passing tone to the F, depending on how you want to look at that. Then we have this F, A, C, which spells the one chord. So that's an F chord. This is a C harmony. Then we have an F harmony here. This is getting messy, isn't it? We have an F harmony here, and then a subdominant here, and then we get to the 5 chord and then the 1 chord. So when you remove this chromatic line, and you know it's chromatic, so you don't need to say anything else about it because you're going to compose that later. Then you know you have 1, you have 5, you have 1, you have 5, you have 1. And that's it. That's all you did. So if I were to rewrite this out, let's just say that's an F. So I went up an octave. So just forget that, you know. I went up an octave, so what? All right. I'm going to just not even think about that chromatic line. But then I went to a C. Okay. And I did that arpeggiation of C. So what? It's easy. I can remember that. Then a B flat. Then an F. Then a C. Then an F. And this is this bass line right here. That explains the whole thing. And then, like I said earlier, this is the sacrificial line in the tenor. Notice they're all C's. C, 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 C. All right, then the alto is just filling out the other harmony. That's either doubling the bass or is the 5th or the 3rd. It just depends on what's missing between the soprano and the bass. And that's how this is composed. All right, I said I'd talk about the middle section for a second. I'm going to look at the chat here in a second, so if you guys have anything to say it now. All right. All right. All right, so I'm going to get a little more detailed. So maybe some of you guys did the part writing way, which I don't do because it's a waste of time. Bach didn't think this way, but okay, there's a 1 chord, right? I have a B natural here, and we're actually in C, but we don't know that yet, but we're going to be in C here. So I know that because this is a leading tone to C. So I'm going to skip this chord for just a second. I don't need to know what it is at this moment because I know we're going to go to a C chord. So now this is the 1 chord in C, right? That's the C chord. So what is this? Well, it's a 5 chord, obviously. It's a 5/6 chord. G, B, D, F. So, yeah, it's a 7th chord. All right. So I'm trying to get to here, right? Well, something catches my eye real quick. This next note is a D, and look at that right there. And then see this F. Whoop! I'm trying to draw to that. It was supposed to be a straight line. Let me do that again. That's called voice exchange. Okay, I'm going to come back to this little area. I'm going to skip over for just a second because I want to go backwards for a second. And I want to look. So I have this 5 chord right here, which is 1 sort of in this key center that we're in. So obviously we're going to have a 5 before that, and that's exactly what we have. We have a 5 chord. All right, so it lines up like that. So what is this, if it's this voice exchange thing? So it's made up of a D and an F. So in the key of C, where do we get a D and an F? Anybody? Anyone want to leave it in the chat? What a D and an F are, you know, if you're a detective, what is a D and an F in the key of C? Anybody? Okay. It's a 2 chord, right? It's a D minor. And this whole thing spells D minor. Look, D, F, A. Man, that was horrible writing. Let me get... DFA right there. And then FD. So this G is a dissonance. It's not dissonant against the chord, oddly enough. It's dissonant against the overall harmony in this area, which is the 2. This whole area right here is the 2. But this G is consonant with this right here. Isn't it? No, it's not. Come on. I'm trying to get you guys to pay attention. So without even figuring out what this is, look at my cadence right here. I have a 2, 5, 1. What chord goes right there? I want you guys to like interact with me. Come on. What chord would go right here normally? Well, the most obvious is a 6. 6, 2, 5, 1. It's the most common progression ever. And that's what we have here. 6, 2, 5, 1. So there's the analysis of this section. This F, which is a pivot chord in a way, because we've heard F, the key of F, all the way up until this point. So we don't know we're in C yet. So, you know, whatever that, if you want to call that a 4 chord, whatever, but you don't know it's a 4 chord yet. You don't recognize the harmony until this next chord. So this progression right here is 5, 1, 6, 2, 5, 1. There's that whole area knocked out. Now I called this this live cast speed analysis, and I'm taking forever to analyze this thing. But normally, what I would expect, if to analyze this piece, no more than 5 minutes. And you need to absorb it that quickly as well. But I want to look at some of the details in here, some of the compositional details I mentioned a minute ago, but I didn't really get into it. I'm going to use the cool laser tool here. So notice Bach has all these ties. I mentioned this a moment ago, and notice a couple of them are over the bar line. Bach loved doing that because it sets up a rhythmic offset, but also adds tension, and he did that in the 5 section, or the 5 section. This is really like a bridge, if you want to look at it like that in common terms. But let's see what he does. So we have this F, and we have an A. He holds the A over against a B. So this is a 7 going to 6. And then he holds this note, which is pretty cool, into this chord. And this is a 5 right here. So I'm looking at the intervallic distance between the bass and the alto, which is pretty interesting right now. Then he leaps. Look at this leap. I bet most college teachers would say, they would probably nick you for doing that, which is ridiculous because Bach, I'll pull up some, I'm not always going to do easy chorales. I'm going to do some kind of weird ones where he did some leaps that you probably wouldn't do if you were, in school doing this, because you'd be like, my teacher will probably nick me for that. But he did some crazy stuff in the bass and the tenor, especially. You can do that in the bass. You can do leaps more. That spread in the bass sounds better than it does up top. Okay, so let's look at the next. So we have this E being held over, and then a C. So this spells C-E-G. How about that? So these ties actually spell the 5 chord, which is in this center right here, this key center of C. This is how you analyze a chorale. Not just by putting Roman numerals and calling it a day. You don't learn anything from that. All right, let's finish this. I am going to do a little Roman numeral, but I'm going to get away from it pretty quickly. So we have this G major right here. That goes 5-1. We already talked about that. All right, but now we have a 1 chord. So we're back in F. I need a sharper tool. We're back in F. All right. We have a G and a G with a B flat. We'll talk about that in a second. I mean, I can name what that chord is, but it's not, I don't really need to know that right now. And I don't care what the harmony is. What I want to know is how to compose this. So we're obviously headed for this 5 chord right here, this C chord. So I want to see this connection here. So he walks up scale-wise. The melody he was given is an arpeggiation of G. And in the tenor, I mean the alto, we have a bit of a sacrificial line here. We have Fs, which act as this resolution to E. If you can see what I did there. Do that again. Okay, do it again. So we have the sacrificial line in the alto where it's all Fs except for these little E's, and that's a lower neighbor, and then that's a resolution to the 3rd of the 5 chord. I'll kind of wrap it up with this. I have this thing that I teach called cadential hierarchy. I'll do a lesson on this coming up pretty soon. Cadential hierarchy, though, is you have these categories. All right, it's category 1, category 2, category 3, category 4. All right, we're going to go backwards. That's why I know. Category 1, you have the 1 chord. That's all that really belongs there. Category 2, you can probably guess what I'm going to put here. You have the dominant. So this belongs to the tonic, this belongs to the dominant, and any substitutions of those. But in these two categories, these don't substitute out very often. However, in category 3, it belongs to the subdominant category. I'm sure most of you think of the subdominant as the 4 chord. Indeed it is, but a 2 is also a subdominant. It's not a supertonic. That's the dumbest name ever thought of. It's like somebody couldn't think of what to call the 2 chord, and they said, well, it's above the tonic. It's a supertonic. There's no functional reason to call it that because it acts always as a predominant chord. You know, even in augmented 6th chords or flat 2 chords, they're still predominant chords. They still function in that way. Notice all augmented 6th chords are augmented subdominant. 4 chords or 2 chords, either flat 2 chords or sharp 4 chords. The flat 2 leading to a 5 chord, but it's really leading down. The D flat is leading to the C. The F sharp in the augmented 6 is leading up to a G. Make sense? Make sense? Okay, good. All right, so in category 4, we have what I call, okay, I'm going to use it. I'm just going to, well, this is my made-up word, but it's actually a category for me. It's a subtonic, and some people might call a 7-chord subtonic. I don't. So the subtonic is the substitution of the tonic. And what chord is that? That's the 6th chord. So that's cadential hierarchy. Now, if you want to, I'll just do a couple substitutions here. And I apologize that this is a huge mess. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll just go to this page for a second and write in here. And hopefully this will be cleaner. So I had the category, oh, do it again. Okay, I had this category. This category. I had the subdominant category and the subtonic category. All right. Now, here are some of the substitutions. Well, What could be subbed for the 6? Well, the 1 can, right? So 1. Also, you can have, as an extension of this cat, a 3 chord, like an augmented 3 chord. All right, over here in this category, guess what? Well, this is where your augmented 6 chords live. See that? All right, now there is one substitution here. So if you take, let's say we're in the key of G. So if we write, use a smaller pencil, I think. Okay. This is bass clef, and this is treble clef. Okay. I'm going to erase that now that you know that. Okay. So G. B. D. F. All right, so if you get rid of that, what do you have here? You have a diminished chord, right? 7 chord. So 7 is a substitute for the 5. My future videos won't be this long. I've basically been up all night working on a project, and I decided just to wrap my day up by doing a video. So that's why I'm so talkative. So that's really all I have to say about this. I analyzed it like 3 different times and barely did Roman numerals. And the idea is I've learned to compose like this now. And that's it. That's how you analyze this. You analyze chorales or anything you analyze so you know how to either compose in that style, or just to help you compose, or to play an instrument. Theory really services those two. Theories of the service, it's reverse engineering of composition.